The ranch lay on the edge of a forgotten plain where the soil cracked, like old leather, and the wind never seemed to rest. Mateo Alvarez rose each morning before the sun, not because hope pulled him from sleep, but because work was the only thing that kept despair quiet. His house was small, patched with mismatched boards, and his cattle were few, their ribs showing more clearly with every passing week. The drought had taken nearly everything from him: money, comfort, and the promise that hard work always paid off. Still, Mateo stayed. He believed leaving would mean admitting that the land had beaten him, and he was not ready for that truth. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with fire, Mateo walked toward the dry arroyo to check for strayed cattle. Instead, he found three figures crouched near the rocks. Apaches. They froze when they saw him, hands moving carefully, not threatening but wary. Their clothes were worn, their faces hollow with hunger and travel. Mateo felt the familiar tug of fear rise in his chest, fed by stories whispered in towns and carried by men who had never truly known hardship. For a moment he considered turning back. But hunger recognized hunger. Mateo saw it in their eyes the same way he felt it in his own bones. Without speaking, he lowered his rifle and set it against a stone. He gestured toward his ranch and slowly turned his back, trusting them to follow or leave as they chose. After a long pause, footsteps crunched behind him. He gave them what little he had: beans cooked thin, water drawn from a stubborn well, and a fire to warm their hands against the desert night. No bargains were made. No favors were asked. They ate quietly with the dignity of people who had learned not to beg. Mateo shared his blanket, though the cold would bite harder without it. As the fire burned low, he felt strangely at peace, as if the land itself approved of his choice. At dawn, they were gone. In their place lay a small carved stone wrapped in dried herbs, left carefully near the fire pit. Mateo picked it up, unsure of its meaning, but sensing it was important. His ranch was still poor, his future uncertain, yet something invisible had changed. He did not know it then, but his simple kindness had begun a journey far greater than his lonely land. In the days that followed the strange encounter by the arroyo, Mateo Alvarez felt as though the land around his ranch had begun to breathe differently. Nothing obvious had changed, yet the air carried a quiet awareness that made him pause during his work. He continued his routine as always, patching fences, counting cattle, drawing water from the stubborn well, but there was a sense that unseen eyes were observing, not with threat, but with attention. At night, the coyotes cried closer than before, and the wind whispered through the grass in unfamiliar patterns. Word traveled among the Apaches far beyond Mateo's understanding. It did not spread with urgency or excitement, but with respect. The story was simple. A poor rancher with little to spare had shared his food, water, and warmth without asking for anything in return. Among people who had learned to measure trust carefully, such an act carried great weight. Elders repeated the tale beside quiet fires, and younger men listened, absorbing the lesson that kindness revealed character more clearly than strength. Back at the ranch, small signs of change appeared. Mateo discovered his broken gate repaired one morning, the rope replaced with fresh leather. Another day, he found a neat stack of firewood near his shed, though he had not cut it himself. His cattle, once restless at night, now settled more easily, as if comforted by an unseen presence. Mateo accepted these mysteries without questioning them aloud. He sensed that gratitude was being expressed in a language he did not fully speak. Fear, however, arrived with rumors from nearby settlements. Travelers warned him that large Apache groups had been seen moving across the plains. Some urged him to leave while he still could. Others told him to arm himself and prepare for violence. Mateo listened politely, but their words felt hollow compared to what his own eyes had seen. He remembered the quiet dignity of the three visitors, their careful manners, and the way they had accepted food as equals rather than beggars. One night, the wind shifted sharply, carrying distant voices that rose and fell like a low chant. Mateo stepped onto his porch, lantern in hand, and scanned the dark horizon. In the far distance, shapes moved across the land, too many to count, flowing steadily like a river under moonlight. His heart tightened, but he did not retreat inside or reach for his rifle. Instead, he stood still, grounded by the certainty that whatever was coming was tied to a choice he had already made. As dawn approached, the sounds grew closer, yet remained calm and deliberate. Mateo felt fear, yes, but beneath it lay a strange peace. He sensed that the land, long silent and unforgiving, was about to witness something extraordinary born from a single act of kindness. Dawn broke slowly, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise over what it was about to witness. Mateo Alvarez stood on his porch, the cool morning air brushing against his face, and watched as the shadows across his land took shape. They were everywhere, figures stretching from one fence line to the other, silent and still yet full of presence. Nearly 1,000 Apaches stood on his ranch, not in chaos or threat, but in calm order, their faces turned toward him as the first light touched the plains. Mateo's heart pounded, but he did not run. He stepped forward, boots sinking slightly into the earth he had worked for so many years. An elder moved ahead of the group, leaning on a staff worn smooth by time. His eyes held depth and memory, and when he spoke, his voice carried easily across the open land. He spoke of hunger answered with generosity, of fear met with trust, and of a man who had shared his last meal without expecting protection or reward. Each word felt heavier than the last, pressing against Mateo's chest until emotion tightened his throat. Without another signal, the people spread across the ranch. There was no disorder, no taking by force. Hands went to work. Broken fences were straightened and reinforced. The well was cleared and deepened. Stones set carefully so it would not collapse again. Others examined the soil, pressing it between their fingers, then began marking lines where seeds could thrive even in dry seasons. Mateo watched in stunned silence, as years of struggle were answered in a single morning of collective effort. Children laughed softly as they carried water. Women shared knowledge of plants that healed both land and body. Men moved with purpose, guided by experience passed down through generations. The ranch, once tired and neglected, seemed to awaken under their care. By midday, it no longer looked like a place clinging to survival, but one preparing for renewal. Before leaving, the elder returned to Mateo and placed a woven sash around his shoulders, its patterns rich with meaning. He told Mateo that kindness creates bonds stronger than fear, and that those bonds are remembered. As the Apaches departed, disappearing back into the vastness of the plains, Mateo stood alone once more. Yet the loneliness that had followed him for years was gone. His ranch remained humble, but it was forever changed, sustained by the power of compassion freely given.